Hello everyone, bringing you the Mannequin of the Month for July 2021 today. As usual, the topic has been picked via a poll over on Patreon. The corporal tier over there get to vote each month on what's going to be covered. And the winner this month was a Royal Navy rating serving as part of a boarding party aboard U-826 after its surrender after victory in Europe. Not an uncommon occurrence at the end of the war, just after the end of the war, as U-boats made themselves known to Allied forces and surrendered. This will give a good opportunity to talk about Royal Navy uniform for the time period, as well as the web equipment we have on the Mannequin here, which has already given away what weapon this particular chap would have been carrying. But we'll start at the top as we normally do, work down, talk about the uniform, and then have a look at the web equipment as well. Up at the top here we have the ratings cap. This, of course, pre-war, had been made in, well, pre-war was worn in both a white and a black version, or very dark blue, in home waters. Soon after the start of the war, a decision was made that the blue version or black version would be worn universally in home waters. Originally, of course, the white had been for summer wear and the black or blue had been for winter wear. So quite a distinctive feature of Royal Navy ratings in home waters during the Second World War as they switched over to wearing the blue or black ratings cap throughout the year. The white caps would still be worn in hotter climates. On the front here we have the HMS cap tally. Obviously not showing a ship's name for security purposes. You would see some unofficial variations on this during the war, but the standard cap tally was HMS. And this has been modified in having the bow, which should really be round over the left ear, pulled to the front. And this is actually a separate bow stitched on to get this effect. And it was a common modification during the war and tolerated, as was wearing the cap flatter back on the back of the head. But in a scenario like this, the cap would be worn square on the head as it should be. As can be seen, the uniform itself, the basic Class 2 uniform, is very similar to that which is worn as the dress uniform today. A lot of the features were carried over, although slightly modified. But this is in fact the working uniform. This will be number 3 dress, which is your basic bog standard everyday uniform for aboard ship. Obviously, lots of features to this that really aren't great from a practicality point of view, but it was a long tradition in the Royal Navy and it stuck around. There had been plans pre-Second World War to introduce a working uniform similar to the US's dungaree uniform with the chambray shirt and dungaree trousers. There had been a plan for something similar to that, which obviously would then become number 8 uniform post-war. But at this time period, it was still number 3 dress was the standard working uniform, everyday working uniform, unless you were engaged in particularly dirty duties, in which case you might wear overalls. So, we have the seaman's collar here, the silk underneath that, secured at the front with a bow, and 2 tapes coming down from the V of the jumper here. Underneath the jumper we have the cotton flannel, or white front as it's sometimes referred to. So you have obviously blue jean tape around here, and this is essentially a cotton square neck t-shirt worn underneath the jumper. And that's what this is. It's referred to as a jumper. It's made of wool serge, essentially the same material as battle dress and service dress before it, but made in this very dark blue colour. And that's the basic seaman's uniform for ratings class 2. That is to say, ratings dressed as seamen. You'd also have ratings class 3 and ratings class 1, who wore the fore and aft, the double-breasted jacket or single-breasted working jacket. But class 2 ratings, this is the standard uniform, the jumper, ratings cap, etc. The web equipment worn is for the Lanchester submachine gun, as is given away by the ludicrous pouches. On the Mannequin here it gives quite a good example of how ungainly these are, actually even potentially getting in the way of bringing the stock up to the shoulder. But they're necessary, of course, because the Lanchester uses 50 round magazines, essentially elongated Sten magazines, or rather the Sten magazines are a shortened version of those designed for the Lanchester. So they are very tall and you need tall pouches to carry them. This is actually a mixed set of web equipment. These pouches are really designed for use with 1937 pattern, the Royal Navy switching over mid-war to 1937 pattern from its preceding patterns of web equipment, the 1919 and 1908. The initial issue of Lanchester pouches were designed for use with 1908. They had larger C-hooks to fit on the wider 1908 belt and designed to take the 1908 braces. The modified version here are designed to fit on the narrower 1937 pattern web belt. But what we actually have them worn with here is a 1919 pattern web belt, which the Royal Navy had adopted as a pistol equipment. It's very similar to 1937 pattern in the design of the braces. The belt is a 3-part belt, however. So it is compatible. It's the same width as 1937 pattern, but that's what we have here. And the braces are also from 1919 pattern. It would be quite a few years before the Royal Navy would really standardise on 1937 pattern. 1919 pattern components would show up for quite a while yet, because it is compatible. So there would be no reason for it not to be used alongside 1937 pattern. That's the front of the Mannequin. We'll move this around now and have a look at the left-hand side. Looking at the left-hand side of the Mannequin here, we'll first talk about a couple of features of the jumper. The first is this reverse crease down the side of the arm there. You can see Class 2 ratings, their uniform was folded inside out and rolled, so you end up with these reverse creases, a very distinctive feature of the uniform at this time period. And you can see that the ratings badge is positioned forward of this crease down the arm. This is an economy jumper, so the cuff is plain. Earlier patterns would have 2 buttons at the cuff, and indeed they would return post-war, but this is a mid-war economy measure that was introduced. They were manufactured without a cuff, without a button cuff, just a plain cuff, as you can see there. So in spite of all the dressy elements of a Royal Navy uniform, they did suffer economies as well in terms of manufacturing the uniform. The badge itself represents a leading rate or leading seaman, the fouled anchor, and then beneath that we have the good conduct badge. At this time period, prior to 1946, this represents 3 years good conduct. This is the substantive rate, so that would be equivalent to rank in the army, so lance corporal, corporal, sergeant, etc. Whereas the badge worn in the other arm is still a rating badge, but it shows the non-substantive rate or the trade or branch of the individual, and we'll have a look at that in a minute, just to differentiate between the two while we're talking about this. If we lift the arm out of the way here, we can see again this is a mixed set of web equipment. We do have a 1937 pattern bayonet frog on the hip here, carrying the sword bayonet, which of course the Lanchester submachine gun was designed to take, the 1907 sword bayonet. An interesting feature of a submachine gun that it will take a sword bayonet. That's how it was designed, so the bayonet is carried here, obviously a useful thing to have in a boarding operation. Looking at the back of the uniform here, we'll have another look at the collar here. You can see this is made of what's referred to as cotton jean, and then you have 3 stripes running all the way around the outside. There are various apocryphal stories about what these refer to. The uniform was designed for aesthetic purposes. There's no record that it had any real ceremonial meaning, if you will, the various features of the design. For example, the trousers were also pressed inside out. They had 7 creases up them, which is supposed to refer to the 7 seas, completely made up, because if you were short, I forget the actual height designation, you would only have 5. So there are various legends about what parts of the uniform mean, and as far as I'm aware, none of them hold any water. It's literally, when this was first introduced in the 1850s, the decision was made to have 3 bands of white tape on the collar. This is a very faded example, and ratings, certainly younger ratings, maybe hostilities only ratings, would try and fade their collars quite commonly to make them a little bit more like this sort of colour. Originally they're a darker blue than this, to give an idea that they've had more service than they actually had. Obviously the collar would fade over time, and a faded collar shows someone who's been in the Navy for a while and perhaps has a bit more experience. This is a naturally faded example, and it would not be unreasonable to assume that it's perhaps a pre-war rating who's now wearing this faded collar as part of their number 3 uniform, their working uniform. The back of the web equipment here, if we just lift the collar up, you can see we have the braces crossing over there. These do use a loop, as does 1937 pattern, where they cross over in the back there, and they buckle onto the back of the belt in a similar fashion to 1937 pattern, though the buckles are slightly closer on 1937 pattern, but otherwise very similar. You can see though that this is a 3-part belt. You can see the adjustment hooks going around the outside here, where the right hand front section buckles onto or clips onto the back section of the belt there. And looking at the right hand side of the uniform here, you can again see the reverse crease with the ratings badge set forward of it, and this is the badge for a leading torpedo man, with cross torpedoes and a star above to show that qualification. If we lift the arm out of the way, you can better see the 3-part belt design here, the front section coming up to here, buckling onto the rear section there. So there we are. I do hope you found that interesting. I have to say it's nice to talk about a Royal Navy topic again on the channel. It's one of my preferred topics. I actually started collecting Royal Navy kit before I started collecting Army kit. So it was my closest interest initially when I first started collecting. So it's very nice to be able to talk about it again in this video. I'm very pleased that it did win the poll over on Patreon. As I say, if you have enjoyed this and you'd like to see more from the channel, please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell with the notification button down below. And that will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can. Both Patreon and PayPal are linked down below. And as ever, a huge thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those methods. Of course, if you do subscribe to the Corporal tier over on Patreon, you can vote each month on the topic that's going to be covered in Mannequin of the Month. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And of course, there will be photographs of this posted up over there as well. If you'd like to get in touch but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address down below. That's everything for this video, so until next time, bye for now.